Well, thank you very much for your answers to my questions and the questions we've taken from the audience, and we've managed to debate not only the spread of democracy in the Middle East today, but the alliance between the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union during the Second World War. And I'm sure we could go still further, and you'll yet have another chance to raise these points now in closing statements, which are to run maximum 2 minutes. And we begin with Natan Sharansky against the resolution.
Well, it was mentioned already today that some time ago I, together with Václav Havel, organized international conference in Prague on security and democracy. And it became like kind of international meeting of democratic dissidents from all over the world, but first of all from Middle East, because there were so many democratic dissidents from Iran and Iraq and Libya and Syria and Sudan and Egypt and so on. And while listening to the stories of these people, I think they themselves were surprised to discover how each of them has the same story of personal struggle, of a person who wants to be free and wants his country to be free against totalitarian regime. And it was easy to recognize the stories of our dissident stories, my and Václav Havel then and theirs today, with one difference. We knew that if we go to prison, all the free world will be with us. They know that when they go to prison, the free world is debating whether it is in our interest to support them or the people who jail them. And that's a big problem. Frankly speaking, I'd like that on today's debate, Abraham Lincoln will be speaking together with us. Because this president, when he came to the office, black Americans were slaves and women had no right to vote. If he was asked if it is a good idea to promote democracy, is it a good idea to impose democracy? Is stability should be preferred than democracy? What he would answer? He once said, I don't remember exact quote, I don't have notes with me, but something like this: we will not be the masters, we will not be the slaves. We, of course, thanks God, we are not slaves. We must make sure that we are not supporting the masters. To promote democracy, it's first of all to stop supporting tyrants in the Middle East.
Thank you. Natan Sharansky, now. Now, for the resolution, Flynt Leverett.
I think that in making your vote this evening, you have, in many ways, a quite simple choice. If you believe that the alternative to the House of Saud, the alternative to the Mubarak regime, is a group of Western-educated Jeffersonian Democrats, then you ought to vote against the resolution. If you believe, as I do, that under current circumstances, the alternatives to these incumbent regimes will actually be worse for American interests and, I think, worse for the people in these countries, then you should vote for the resolution. It is a red herring to say that by saying democracy promotion in the Middle East is a bad idea, we basically are washing our hands of any concern about how the Middle East develops. That is simply not true. There is an enormous ferment in the Persian Gulf today around economic reform, around, as Liz pointed out, the spread of information technologies, the increasing involvement of the Gulf states and other Middle Eastern countries in the globalized world of the 21st century. That is not a product of American policy. In fact, I would say we're not doing enough to support those developments. Egypt can get a free trade agreement with the European Union, but it can't get a free trade agreement with us. That's nuts. We ought to be supporting economic reform in these countries. We ought to be standing up for human rights, and the political development in these countries will then, over time, take care of itself. And in the meantime, we will be much better positioned to fight terror, protect the security of the state of Israel, and protect our most vital interests in the Gulf.
Thank you. Flynt Leverett. Liz Cheney, against.
I think it's important as you vote tonight to think about the fact that all three of those arguing for the motion have argued our point. Flynt just argued that we ought to be supporting the changes that we're seeing in the Gulf, not just the economic changes, but the expansion of information technology, the expansion of freedom of the press. That's part of democracy. Dimitri argued that we ought to be supporting freedom of choice. That's what we're doing. And Shibley said we should advocate democracy, we just ought to do it differently. So I think that it's important for us to focus on what is the debate here tonight. But when we've got all three of our opponents arguing that the policy itself may have flaws, but that in one way or another we ought to be advocating democracy, human rights, freedom, economic reform, it is hard not to imagine that what is urging them to argue for this motion is a disagreement about our Iraq policy, a disagreement about George Bush, a disagreement about our foreign policy in general.
One.
And I think it's critically important to recognize this isn't a game. There are real people, real men and women, as I mentioned, across the region today, tonight, tomorrow, who believe America will stand with them for freedom. And I think that the great moral disservice that we could do to them, the greatest moral disservice we could do to them would be to fold our tent in the face of terrorist attack, to fold our tent in the face of extremists who don't believe that women should be equal, who don't believe in freedom of religion, who don't believe in freedom of speech. Our opponents have also said we need a balanced policy. We need to work with regimes when they can help us in the war on terror, and at the same time we need to be supporting freedom. That's what we do. You can say we don't do it the way you would do it. We could have a debate about how to do it more effectively, but at the end of the day, that is what we're doing. That is what the policy is. And I think it's critically important that we don't abandon those who are standing with us to help build a world in which we don't have to fear attack by terrorists.
Thank you, Liz Cheney. Closing statement, Shibley Telhami for the resolution.
We need more democratic change, more liberty, more human rights, not words to claim we are doing it, and not promises that we can, in fact, do it. The train wreck is too long to miss. It is easy to sell dreams in times of pain, and many, after the horror of 9/11, so badly wanted answers, and visions of spreading democracy were too good to resist. If something is imaginable, we thought, it is possible. If something is possible, we thought, it is likely. Thus is the stuff of wishful thinking. It would still be worth the dream if the costs in reality were not so unbearably high, if it weren't for the fact that the morning after has been even worse than the day before, that millions are paying the price. There's a time to go with your heart.
One.
And there's a time to go with your mind. And this is the time to go with your mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Shibley Telhami.